Well, I've got a big surprise. One of my oldest friends, Hoyt Clark. I was at his house the very first time I saw MTV. He's a good friend of mine, and I've looked so forward to this. I've been trying to get him to come for months. We was talking about earlier.
Good to be here.
I'm glad you come. You're one of my favorite people.
Well, thank you.
You're always in a good mood.
I try to be.
You ever get in a bad mood? Because you always seem to be happy.
Yeah, I have a bad side sometimes. I don't like to admit that, but, I just sometimes, but for the majority, I always am in a good mood.
What gets you in a good mood when how do you look so happy and positive?
Well, I just can't. There's good in everybody. And sometimes if I'm a little upset at somebody, I have to sometimes stop and think, well, they believe how they believe, and I believe how I believe, so they have their right, and I have my rights, and so that just puts me in a good mood. I say, all they're doing is voicing their opinion, and it's okay. But in the business world, it's a little different sometimes.
In the business world, do you have to? Is positive thinking a big plus?
Oh yes. To me, always has been.
Have you known people that seem to always have a negative outlook? How does it play out?
Well, it's like that they were weaned on the dill pickle, and they got a prune personality on the wrong side of the moon. I hate to go through life like that. Everything's positive. Something is good in every situation if you just look at it long enough. Now, I'm speaking in the business world, of course, and stuff. I love seeing the good. Now, I realize things are as the way it is today in our political arena and our government.
Yeah.
It's hard to see it. But I'm praying for the best to come from it.
And that's always been ever changing, I guess, right?
Yes.
Do you see things come full circle in the way of things that were true as you were growing up, but then they become different, and then they come back? Like I was thinking of something the other day that they were talking about these high speed rails transporting people from Nashville to Chattanooga, and from Chattanooga to Atlanta, and mass and I thought,
mass transit.
That's just the railroad. So sometimes things don't really change; they just come back reinvented in a different way.
Sometimes that's very true. That's very, very true.
Like, now we don't have the newspaper now. Or did you get the
that's
newspaper?
The saddest thing that's ever happened to Cleveland. They don't even have and I don't know how true it is. I just heard this past week that it had been sold. See, I worked for the newspaper and for Goldie Wattenberger when I was in high school. I was a senior. And Mrs. England was our teacher. And I worked for Goldie. And I worked with some of the finest people. We had a Jim Baldry.
Jim Baldry.
Oh, yeah. Ken Tarpley.
Hazel Bradley.
Hazel Bradley. I loved Hazel to death. They're the finest people.
Well, she'd tell you off in a minute, wouldn't she?
Beecher Hunter. Oh, they didn't come no finer than Beecher Hunter. And I mean, these people, we had a booming newspaper. I realize the internet has affected the newspaper print business. I do understand that. But Cleveland, Tennessee needs I still think they need the size of Cleveland. We need at least 5 days a week newspaper. I would think we had a newspaper every day.
To go home and read the newspaper was a really big, it was a sort of calming effect, wasn't it? Just reading the newspaper.
It was relaxing.
Yeah. I don't know why it is, but it was.
Well, you just sit down and you get your mind off of all the rubbish, and you just sit down and you see what's happened today.
And you feel like you're current.
Right, and what the city government did, what the county government did.
See, we don't know now.
We don't know.
We have no clue.
So, I mean, that really...
I would pay more. I would think that the newspaper, if they said, well, we can't make it, I would pay more. I would pay more for the banner than they know I would.
That's just true. Of course, see, back in the day, Sheeny White, you probably never did know him, but he started a newspaper. My father was, he was involved in that, and Arch Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah, I know the name of it. Morning Sun?
Morning Sun.
Morning Sun.
Matter of fact, I think
Glenn Ramsey?
Glenn Ramsey was in on it, and there were several investors in it. Mm-hmm. And they ended up, and it just didn't make it. Of course, Sheeny passed and had some health issues.
Wasn't that on 64 Highway?
At the latter, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What were they thinking?
I don't know, but I just know that. But see, back when when I was a kid, a teenager, and the banner was down on 2nd Street. That's exactly when I found out Jim Baldry. I came bouncing in the front door and started up the steps to Goldie's office. And Jim said, "Boy, did you hear about President Kennedy getting shot?"
Is that right?
I said, "What?" I just froze. And Jim Baldry, finest guy that you ever meet in a lifetime. And he said to me, he said, yes. He said that he's in Texas. And sure enough.
Everybody remembers where they were when that happened.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I went on up the steps and I was just so down and depressed, just that quick. To think something like that could have happened. And everybody up in the advertising department, they were down and out. And if the ones were there. And it was just, oh, mercy. But you have things that you remember.
Well, that's weird, isn't it? How
Isn't
certain
it?
things.
Exactly.
Why Jim Baldry? I mean, of all people that you would have thought about with him, but that's what you remember. And probably 4 or 5 other things happened, but that's what triggered the memory.
Yes.
I remember Jim Baldry.
Do you?
Yeah, he lived on Brentwood Drive.
Yeah.
Down the road from Ted and Judy Gobble and Tim Gobble.
Really?
Yeah, he lived on Brentwood Drive.
Oh, that's a fine group of people.
Jim Baldry. He had a son. I don't know what ever happened to him.
I don't know. I know his brother Terry, and I know his sister Paula.
Jimmy Baldry. That was his name, Jimmy Baldry.
Yeah, but he was a fine man.
But back to the newspaper, what were you, delivery?
No, I worked in the advertising department.
In high school?
Yes.
What was your job?
My job was to everybody that bought ads, they had to have tear sheets. So they could put them up in their stores or whatever.
Yeah, like tape them to the window.
Yes. And if you want to get chewed out, you don't make, if you didn't take the people the tear sheets.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Oh, and Goldie would come loose.
Oh,
and
I
he
bet.
could do that pretty
He could
easy.
do that.
Real quick, too.
Yeah.
And, but he ended up as a lifelong friend.
Did you ever get into it with Goldie?
We had our differences, but you always lose when you got into it with Goldie, especially when...
He used to come to the restaurant when I'd go there with my Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
And he would come and eat with them. And I remember one morning him and Dee Frisbee got into almost a fist fight.
Well, now Goldie could do that, yeah.
And Dee Frisbee could too. Remember Dee
he
Frisbee?
could. Yeah, I knew
That
Dee.
was two that wouldn't be good to tangle each
No,
other.
that would not be a good thing.
Did you go to Bradley High then?
Bradley Central.
Has your family always been in Cleveland?
Well, my father came here from McMinn County, and so we. I came to Cleveland when I think I was 7 years old. We lived on Walker Street.
Close to Lee College, I guess.
Yeah, well, it is part of Lee
Oh,
now.
yeah.
The Cons lived on 8th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Goodwin lived across the street from us. And, of course, I knew all the Cons, because they just lived down the street from me, And the North Cleveland Church of God's right over here. And that's where we lived, and just had a...
Did you go to Arnold?
No, I went to Mayfield. My father came to work for Brown Stove. And back then, Grover Brown and Kenneth Brown were alive. Grover sent my father to school. I just remember as a kid, 2 nights a week, my dad was going to school. And Grover wanted him to become production control, and that's what he studied. And later, that's what he did at Brown Stove. He was with him for 25 years. And then...
I bet he could walk to work nearly.
Oh, no, yeah, he could. But then later, we moved off of Walker Street to Carolina Avenue across the street from Brown Stove's main office. He could walk straight across the street. And so that turned out to be good. And I was just a kid, there at Mayfield,
That whole area's changed a lot in the years. Was it more prestigious then than it is now?
I guess it maybe was. I don't really, it seemed to be. But everybody knew everybody. I mean, it was just a good area, What it was Grover and the Browns owned all that property. And so Mr. Brown told my dad, said, I'd like for you to move in there, right? And Dad spent a lot of time at Brown Stove, day and night, really, after he got his education. And until they built a house. And then, of course, we moved out of there, and I don't know how old I was back then at that time. I guess I was maybe 10, 11 years old, 12 maybe. But anyway, then we moved, out on Mouse Creek. My mom and dad was the first or second house to build in Eldridge Acres.
Which side, east or west?
No, it would be the west side. Matter of fact, Willie Jenkins.
That's where I was raised, West Eldridge.
Yeah, well,
on George Avenue.
That's right.
I remember when Willie.
You know where Willie
we rode
lived?
the bus together.
Yeah, you remember Willie?
Yep.
All right. Well, Willie bought Mom and Dad's house Randall Fisher built that house.
Oh.
My uncle Elmer Rapier, he was a general foreman for Randall Fisher at that time.
Is that right?
Yes.
Randall built a good house.
He did build a good house. Randall was a good guy. Yeah. And my uncle Elmer was general foreman for him. And he built our house in Eldridge Acres.
So how I would have.
I lived there, and of course, then there was me, and I got it was me and Bob Lonis and Phil Matthews and
Bob
Matt
Lonis
McCoy.
lived down the road where the pond
That's
is.
right. Yeah. That's a fact. Yeah,
Bob Lonis. Bob Lonis.
Bob Lonis, but you back up this way, and Phil Matthews lived where Creekside is. I used to ride my horse all down in there.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it was.
I used to sneak over to the Lonises and ride their horse when they weren't home. I don't know. That was the craziest thing.
Lonis?
Yeah. Because they had the big pond, and.
Oh, Randy, I think, still lives there.
Yeah, Randy does.
Yeah. But see,
Bob died, right?
Yeah, Bob.
I liked
died.
him.
Oh,
I
Bob
liked Bob.
he was a prince.
He
boy.
was a man's man. wasn't
He was a man's man, I promise you that. And he was my dear friends through our teen years. And me and him and Mike, and, we were just all, we used to camp out down there on Matthews Farm and Lonis, wherever, it didn't matter. We just had a good time. That's where and Bob, yeah, I hate that Bob passed, but then Phil's passed now. Matthews.
Yeah, he passed before Bob, didn't he? Or after?
I think it was a little after Bob, yeah. But, he was down at Bendable. He was down over security for many years. Mm-hmm. And of course, I always, back then, now you'd go out Mouse Creek, just every crack and crevice and
everywhere.
everything.
They built on every piece. I remember when you lived there, it was probably a gravel road from West Eldridge out, right?
No. We had a little. It was gravel and asphalt.
But wasn't it like from the creek bend?
Yeah.
Remember creek?
Oh, yeah.
Like creek bend out, it was. I guess that old gravel tar.
Yeah, that gravel
road.
tar. Yeah. Mm, oh yeah. And see, Yank Matthews was Phil's dad. He had the barber shop downtown.
Does that seem like a long time ago, all of that? In your mind?
Well, it does seem like a long time ago if I want to look at it that way, but I think that, yeah, it does seem like a long time because at my age, I've just, it's hard for me until I had my aneurysm. I never realized how old I was. That was my problem because I just went day and night and, 14, 16 hours a day, and I never thought nothing about it.
How long did you work that hard?
Oh, Lord, I did that from, I did that most of my life, just about.
When you went to work for the Banner, was that because you wanted something to do, or was that what everybody did at that time?
No, I took a course in high school. Mrs. England, Johnny England's and Jim England's mom was my teacher. And so I took that for my credit as a distributive education. And so I went to work for Goldie, and of course, seemed like I fit in, and we had a good relationship, and I knew it didn't take me long to get to know everybody there, and everybody became my friend.
Yeah.
And so, they're all just about gone now. All the people that I worked with there. Then I look at myself in the mirror and I say, hey, Hoyt, do you know how old you are? Well, it gets you to thinking. I'll tell you what really gets you, give you a wake-up call. You go in and have all these tests done.
Uh-huh.
And then to come back out and say, Mr. Clark, you can't leave. I said, I can't what? Honey, I'm fixing to go back out that door right there. I mean, what do you mean I can't leave? She said, no, Mr. Clark, your aneurysm in your aorta is 5.4 centimeters.
Did you feel fine?
Well, I never knew there was anything wrong with me. She said, and we can't let you, we're not allowed to let you leave. Oh man, alive, that is, and she said, you can drop right here. Nobody can save you. And I said, what?
God.
I said, are you serious? She said, oh, Mr. Clark, I've never been more serious in my life. And I said, jeepers. So my wife was with me, and I said to her, I said, she was getting some tests. I said, how'd you come out on your test? She's telling me she's doing all right. And I said, well, they're telling me I can't leave. And I said, you're going to have to take me, to... So anyway, I got on the phone and started making some calls and telling, a couple of buddies that what's happened to me, and they tell me who to call. And so anyway, we got Dr. Michael Greer's office in Chattanooga, and I went straight there. And next thing I know, man, I'm in here like.
Like the same day or the
No,
next day?
no, it was. They had to run some tests and do some things and to get me ready. But I mean, boy, you talking about something? I called my pastor, and I said, Pastor, I said, you gotta be down here with me. I mean, they're telling me what my chances are. And when you got odds like that, I mean, it's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe, and I just told my kids and my family that, hey, it's me, but it's been a good trip. And if it's time, well, it's up to God. And if it's His will, well, I'll come out of this thing, and if it's not, well, I won't. And so Gay Sears, did you ever know Gay? I love Gay to death. And I said, Gay, I would like to I'd like to be around for a while longer. And he said, you're going to be fine. Boy, I'm talking to myself, boy. I liked what he said, and I like his faith.
Yeah. He was right.
He was right, but anyway, I went in there and then got the surgery, and after you have that kind of surgery, you always got a caution flag up, seem like, for something else to.
How long's it been?
That was in 2018. 2018, September the 11th.
We just never know when. That's why I don't like to go to the doctor, because they scare me to death.
Well, I understand. I used to be that way. And I'm still that way to some degree. But at the same time, for example, they saved my life, whereas if it had ruptured, they say it's only a minute or two and you're done. Even if you got 5 surgeons there, they can't save your life. So I see that, but I'm gonna, and I think to myself, I've taken enough vitamins in my life to have I mean, you just wouldn't believe. I mean, I've been a fanatic in vitamins for 35 years. So I think, did that not do me any good?
Yeah.
I mean, what's it? And they're not cheap. And I think, what in the world is going on here? But I guess, my dad had an aneurysm. And my dad passed at 68.
Did he die from the aneurysm?
No, he was able to have surgery and he died from a heart. He had open heart surgery twice. And thank God, I've not had to have open heart surgery, and I've not had to have, Dad just couldn't seem like on that second surgery, he never could get regenerated for some reason.
I wonder if it's because it gets your spirits down as much as anything.
I don't know. Dad worked up until, Dad, after that 50 years old, Dad went back to school and became an EMT.
Is that right?
Oh, yes. And then when they opened the ambulance service, he and yours, Calfee, and the whole, they were all involved in it. And Dad retired from there. Oh, I don't know. I guess he was maybe 66 when he had that last. But, Dad went back to school, and he loved the emergency medical service. He said they saved more lives, and of course he spent most of his time making sure Bradley County had the best training, the best equipment, the best, with the commission.
That's interesting that at 50, he went back to school and changed whole careers.
Yes.
And that's a totally different career.
Totally different career. And that was back when the original ambulance service started behind the hospital. And yes, he just completely did and there it was, But he was a devoted, dedicated man alive. He would work with those young boys to get them their education, and see to it that they passed. And he wanted them to know, how to save a life.
Do you think that all these taking vitamins and stuff, I don't know if it's, I just think that we're just going to be here as long as God wants us to be. And I'm not sure if there's anything we can do that changes that. Because I know people that smoked their whole life, it didn't bother them. Know people that, watched what they eat and they died young. So I don't know that any of this matters.
Well, I don't know that it matters, but I do believe the Word. I believe the Bible. And I believe that your body is what you... you can abuse your health and you can abuse your body, and I think that you won't last as long.
But I've known people that have abused their body.
I know what you're saying. I've seen the same thing. And they'll just live anywhere in the world. And I think, if that was me, man, I would have done checked out. Because I don't live that way,
That's why I'm wondering if it's not more attitude than it is what we do. I mean, here you're 78, you got a good attitude.
Well, I'm going to be 78 here next month, and I got news for you. You're right.
I mean, you look fine to me.
I have people tell me all the time, I can't believe, man, that don't mean some people.
You still got all your hair.
Well, yeah, but it's turned white, but I don't really care what color it turns, as long as it don't turn loose.
Mine turned loose.
But
mine's going to grow back.
Well, if you could ever come up with something that'll grow back, you just go to the Bahamas and collect your checks, because that'll,
I know this guy that went and got one here a while back, about a year ago. He got a hair transplant, and man, I'm telling you what, it looks good. I'm thinking about that, but what does it matter now?
Hey, I had a partner one time, this is a true story. I had a partner, his name was Zafar Ali Beg. And he and I started this company called Phoenix Systems International. And it's been several years. But he started losing his hair. But he was brilliant. Now, I mean brilliant. This guy really was a brilliant guy. He still is. He's down in Costa Rica now, blowing and going, and he's doing. But he started losing his hair, and he got hooked up with some doctor down in Georgia that was some way in his scalp that would, and they would put hair, transplant hair in his head, and he's got a full head of hair to this very day. And I said, that's like planting corn. I said, how does that work? He said, Hoyt, I don't know, but I do know that I got hair now. He's from the Middle East.
I wonder what. Well, this guy that I was talking about is from the Middle East too. They must be into that.
Yeah, they must be, because he had somebody, and I don't know how they did it.
I always wondered, would it come in gray if you were gray, or would it come in dark, or how would that work?
Now, his hair came in, he was salt and pepper, and his came in mostly salt, than more salt than pepper, and then he just put him some dye on it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean... Yeah,
see, I wouldn't want to have to do that every day.
See, I'm not going to fool with that stuff. No. Matter of fact, I'm not going to dye my hair, period.
You remember Dole Cry?
Don't cry. Yes, I do.
I remember him one time, his hair was so thick. And I said, Dole, how do you keep your hair so thick? He said, man, I wished I could shave this off. I hate getting up every morning and combing my hair. And eventually he had a full head of hair, but he still shaved his head.
He did.
I always thought that was odd.
Oh, yeah, man. If I've got any, I wouldn't want to go.
No, he didn't care. He didn't want the
trouble.
trouble.
Cry.
Don't cry.
Don't cry. I remember Dole. I sold him a piece of property one time that I bought at an auction out there on Brimer Creek Road.
He was a big operator at one time.
One time he was big time.
They don't realize, and I knew him, they don't realize how big an operator Dole Cry was at one time.
No, and I'll tell you, Dole had a lot of, he was like, you know, Dole was a good guy. Dole's my friend.
Mine too, yeah.
He was, I always liked Dole.
Yeah.
But he had a way about him a lot of people didn't like.
He was pretty much a smart aleck.
He was arrogant, and he didn't care what you thought.
No, he didn't.
But Dole was this, he was the kind, I said to him, Dole, one day, I said, do you, he started some little salvage business out there.
I remember, yeah.
And I said, Dole, he told these people, you know, something about, you know, they brought something back, and I said, Dole, don't you have a nicer way of saying, he said, well, now, Hoyt, I ain't gonna put up with that foolishness. I can just tell you that right now. And I said, no, I said, it's kind of funny. I said, you gotta deal with the public. You can't. He said, yeah, I'm supposed to.
He wasn't going to bend for nobody.
He wasn't going to bend for nobody, and that was just the way he was. I told him, I said, well, it's like this, Dole. I said, you know, I heard all my life. You know, Cletus was one of my mentors back when I was a young. I was going to name that boulevard, that Exit 20.
Was he as good a guy as they say?
Cletus Benton Boulevard, it should have been. But he was the nicest man I ever walked in shoe leather. He was good to people. But anyway, I brought his name up because I said, Cleese always told me, he said, Hoyt, you be nice to the people going up that ladder. And I was just a young businessman. He said, that's the same ones you're going to meet coming back down that ladder. And I let that register with me. And I thought, well, that's about like you can't please everybody. And you'll go nuts trying to please everybody. So if you think you're going to please everybody and you want to do that all your life, please everybody, then you need to sell ice cream because people love ice cream and they're not going to be upset at you.
But other than being in some type of business like that, you're going to make people upset.
You're not going to please everybody all the time. It's impossible. It doesn't matter how much you bend over backwards, you're still not going to please them.
And even if you do please them, I say, well, except for this or except for that.
It's always exception.
That's always hurtful to somebody that's really trying hard.
That's trying hard. Back years and years ago, I decided, hey, look here. My banker was Ray Kaler back in the early days, and he was at Cleveland National, and he said, he said, you could make some money if you didn't try to please everybody all the time. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you can only do so much. Some people, it's impossible to please them. I never forgot him telling me that.
Was that Chip's daddy?
That's Chip's daddy.
That's right. I remember him.
He was like a brother I never had. Never had a brother. And he was like Ray and I were we later became that way. And then I was at the Hilton Hotel in Knoxville, Tennessee, when they called and told me that for me to get to Cleveland, that I was meeting with a guy named Lester Lee, Lee's End of America, trying to buy this property in Dalton, Georgia. And they called and told me, said, Ray has had an accident. You need to come. When I got here, he was already passed away.
He was fairly young then, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, he was young. And he was the greatest guy you'd ever meet.
People really liked him.
Oh, and he'd go all out. I mean, if he believed in you, but then, some things happen that this is just, beyond his control. He had a disease about the arteries some way. They had to put arteries in his legs for his legs to have circulation. And then he had some kind of a heart attack or circulatory problem.
What do you attribute your good memory to?
Oh, I don't know. I just, God's given me what I've got. I'm just glad I've got it.
But you remember people's names and places as well as anybody I know.
Well, thank you. I don't know.
Did your mother have a good memory?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she passed away with Alzheimer's. But up until she was probably 80 years old, I guess, she had her mind was sharp as tack. Well, maybe in her early 80s, her mind was sharp as tack. And my dad, his mind was sharp.
Memory good?
Oh, yeah. And I just kind of look at it like, I've had some of the most exceptionally mentors in my life. When I was a kid, before I guess I was 13, 14 years old, and I got to go to work for Dan McDowell, Hollis Pretty, Clyde Humbert at Superior Cash Market. I got the opportunity to meet John Douglas.
John Paul, he was one of my best friends.
Well, John Paul, I loved him.
There's his picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a man. I mean, he was.
John really liked you.
Oh, I thought the world of him. He and I had more fun together. We went to an auction one time. That's another story for another day. But anyway, I said, but Hollis Pretty. He was a wealthy Cleveland businessman. And Norman Bond.
No, I remember Norman.
And Theodore Tipton. And I'm out here building houses over in Valley Hills Estates. I'm up on a roof, and Theodore Tipton drives up, and I never will forget it, a white Chevrolet station wagon. He sold real estate here in town. He had Tip Supermarket, and that was kind of how that, and Nell pretty well ran the.
That was his wife,
That was
right?
his wife, and she pretty well ran the supermarket.
She hadn't been dead long.
No, huh? But he pulls up and he says, come down here. And I'm up. I came down and he says, get in the car. And I said, well, I've got time. We're trying to get this thing in the dry. And I said, and I had Lamar, but some of my boys ever was, and I was trying to. And he said, did you hear what I said? I've got a deal. We need to go look at it right now, or we're going to lose it. Get in the car. And I'm young. Well, lo and behold, Dee, I took my apron off and took it over there, and I told the Martin, some of the guys there, I said, I've got to run somewhere with this guy here for a few minutes. And he had, and I forgot the name, maybe he was working for Rip Townsend at that time. Anyway, he was working for some real estate company, and he loved it. And he was on his door there, and he said, we're going down here, we're going to buy this store. And my brother's going to run it for us. Well, I said, okay. What are we going to do with this store? And he says, we're going to add it to the mini markets. We had one mini market, just a little mini market store. And he said, we're going to buy it. Down on the Spring Place and Cherokee Road, there was a little store there. And sure enough, that day, we bought that little store.
Convenience store.
Convenience store. And of course, he wanted to change it. And then he brought his brother, I think his name was Jack. Anyway, he brought him in there, and he was going to take care of that. And I told him, I said, Tip, I said, man alive. I said, what in the world? How are we going to take care of all this stuff? Just you never mind. We'll get it done. Did you ever know Tip?
I didn't know Tip.
Tip was a man that had a crazy fiery temper. Wild temper. But see, Mr. Vaughn, Norman Vaughn, raised him. And that's how Vaughn's became Tips.
Oh.
See, Mr. Vaughn, Norman Vaughn, he had one daughter.
Yep, and she's...
I don't know whatever happened to her, matter of fact. But she, wonderful. I met her a few times.
Did she marry Charlie McDowell?
She may have, I don't know.
That's right.
She may have.
Yep.
Well, I don't know whatever happened. She's still around. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
But just those kind of people like that,
yeah.
You can't ever. I remember one time I was going to buy a horse, and I wanted this beautiful sorrel walking horse, and I didn't have the money to buy it. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to I'm gonna have to go and see, can I borrow some money, I guess, to buy this horse. So I said something to Clyde Humbert about that. And Clyde said, Hoyt, Hollis will loan you the money. He makes little loans like that. I said, do what now? He said, yeah. I said, he'll loan you. How much is it? I said, $500. It's a good horse. Beautiful horse. Boy, it was too. And I said, you mean Mr. Pretty that comes in here? See, he didn't work there. He owned the third interest, and Clyde and Dan ran the show. And so anyway, my funny story was he said, yes, he said, you just ask him, said he likes you. And I don't know, I said, I asked him. I said, Mr. Pretty, I said, he said, tell him I told you to ask him. I said, okay. So I asked him. He said, why, yeah, Sonny. Call me Sonny. He said, how do you want to pay me back? I forgot. I think I told him $20 a week or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, he loaned me money to buy my old king, my horse. I got acquainted with those kind of people. And I enjoyed it. And then when I grew up, and after working in the supermarkets, and then I done go and help people unload. They'd have these big tractors, 18-wheelers of produce come in. And you could unload them at night, and make some extra money. They paid a little more money.
Yeah.
And Arla Stonecipher, Stoney Supermarket, he did that same thing. And Lord, we've unloaded many of them, a load of watermelon and cantaloupes and stuff out there,
There were more small supermarkets back then, right?
Yes.
They were like every few miles.
Yes, it was like community markets.
Yeah.
And they all did their fair share.
Almost like the Dollar General's trying to be now, right?
Kind of about very similar.
That's what I was saying. There's some things that come back around.
Yes, that's exactly right.
If you want to know the future, look what's happened in the past.
Exactly.
Isn't that funny how that works?
It is. It's just like right now, I remember back when Glenn Hooper, they had Glenn's Food Store.
That was wasn't that on
right here on North Lee Highway.
Yeah, that's where John Paul used to work. Didn't he work at Glenn's
Gene worked there.
Gene, that's right.
Gene Officer.
Gene Officer. Glenn's
But
Food
Glenn
Store.
was, they delivered. Well, now, then Lloyd Hamilton got in the Hamilton's food business.
Yeah.
The Callaway's, they delivered. There was a few of them that delivered, you see. It's coming back.
That's the same.
They're delivering now.
That's right. That's Uber and Uber
Yeah, and
food
DoorDash and all that stuff.
It's the same thing.
Same
It's
thing.
over. What was it? They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's what they mean.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
On the Courthouse Square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
These people, now we can talk about icons that I know. Bill Harris,
Yes.
John Douglas, all those people, and Randall Fisher, Hoyt Clark,
Yeah.
in my mind. But you can mention those people that Mr. Pretty, I never heard of him.
Oh, you never knew?
No,
You never heard of it?
No, and never heard of the Humbert guy. But the thing is, they had mentors that you
Yes.
never heard about.
Right. Dan McDowell, we would work all day, and I would and he loved to fish at night. We'd leave the closest store up at 10, and we'd go to the river fishing. And we would run trot lines. He taught me how to do that. I never knew how to do that, but he taught me. And and he would say, oh, while we was running trot lines, Dan would say, little fishy in the brook, come and get on Thomas Daniel's hook. And I'll never forget that as long as I live, see. Did you ever know Terry McDowell?
I knew Terry.
That's his son.
Is that right?
He had 3 daughters, Pat and Linda. And
Terry works for Johnny now, I believe, right?
he works for Johnny Holmes.
Yeah,
now.
right.
Yeah, he does now.
Yeah.
But Johnny, of course, you know, he's a dear friend of mine. You do know that.
Yeah.
Many, 50-something years. Need to say a prayer for him ever change again.
Yeah, he's had isn't he in ICU?
No, he's out. He got home late yesterday. And, but he's, you know,
I tried to get him to come on here, and it just, you need to help me get him to do that.
Johnny is one of the, he's the prince of the community. A lot of, people don't know what all he's done. You know, people tell me that they don't know what, you know, I try to help a lot of people, and I don't, Johnny's the same way. Johnny helps people. Nobody ever knows nothing about it. He helps schools, he helps things that people don't even know nothing about.
He doesn't want them to know, does he?
No. For example, I don't even know how this is all happening because I just found this out the other day. He was in ICU. A guy walks up to me and says to me, you know Johnny Holmes? And I said, oh yeah, I've known Johnny for nearly 60 years. I said, since he ever came to Cleveland, since he managed a little company called Home Credit Company uptown. I said, hey, they don't come no farther. Well, he said, I bought this business, and he said, and I'm doubling up paying him back. He said, because he loaned me the business to get started, and he furnished my money for me. I said, you're gonna be kidding me. And it just, I think it was Thursday or Friday. And, but he is, but you know, there's, Johnny he's a good guy. He's a good guy. A lot of people,
Everybody likes Johnny.
You don't hear nothing. Johnny has always been he's been there for a lot of people that people don't know nothing in the world about. I've known of, one time, I'll tell you a funny story, one little incident that happened to me and Johnny. I went up to his office. I was supposed to meet him on this particular day, and I think we were maybe looking at a piece of property. I don't know what it was. I have no idea. I got up there, you know, his precious sister, Barbara, she is his working
Yeah, right.
Well, I get up there. Mel is in her office. I go on down, Rick's in his office, Barbara's in her office, and the door's closed. Well, I'm thinking, holy cow. Barbara, you know, she's just precious.
Yeah.
She said, oh, he's got somebody in there. I said, okay, all right. So I sit down in a chair. And I said, oh, just a minute. So I'm just sitting here, you know, waiting. And I think, my word. I mean, his time. Forget
Yeah.
mine. I mean, you know, I have time. Few minutes, here comes Johnny. First comes a little lady. She comes walking down the hall. And boy, I jump up and I walk in his office. And I said, Johnny, you know, I've been sitting there waiting on you. I said, time's of the essence. I said, what? He said to me, he said, this is what makes Johnny who Johnny is. He said, that little lady right there has traded with me, done business with me for years since back when I was getting going. She's got a son, or grandson, one of the two, in jail. She needs the money to get him out. And I'm going to take care of her. And he had been in there taking care. That's the Johnny. That's why Johnny's who Johnny is. Took the time to make sure. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you wouldn't have known that if you had.
I would have never known. I didn't know. I mean, I was thinking that she's in there probably, you know, I didn't have no idea. It was really irrelevant. I mean, it's just because I knew time was of the essence. And, you know, I had to be somewhere or something, and he, but he was going to take, he was not about to tell her.
No.
He wouldn't have never done that. That's what's made Johnny.
He's been very successful in business too, right?
Oh, man. You know, I guess Johnny's probably, I don't know, I should reserve that because I don't know. He's one of the wealthiest in our community. I'll just leave it there. And we've got some others that have been very wealthy, that made very successful, but he's right up there in the top of the ranks.
You know, when those people get to that level and they want to help,
It's a numbers game.
it helps everybody, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a numbers game to them. It doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't. It's not all about. It's a. You know, I get to it where I would say, well, hey, I want to get this deal done. Johnny said, well, I want to get to it next week or something. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm the kind of fellow that I want to wrap my packages right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm
have a
gonna do
hard
it,
time
let's
with
do it.
patience.
If I'm not, let's forget it.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
I'm afraid I'll change my mind.
Exactly, or either. I've done stupid stuff like that, Dee, and it comes up to show me that maybe sometimes I should have changed my mind.
Well, I know the same thing, and sometimes when you get to trying to fit, I get to where I'm trying to make it fit more than I get to think it is a good deal or not. I just trying to make fit a square peg in a round hole. If you keep pushing it, something will break and it'll go in.
Yeah, but I know myself that my problem through my entire life, I think, has been you trust. There's something about it that you want to trust. You trust people. You believe in people. Trust people. I trust people too much. For example, I guess I learned it from way back years ago. And I've just still, and today you can't use those same tactics. I mean, people, I remember years ago, people would loan people money. And I mean, just never didn't think nothing about it. Just said, and they trusted them. They believed them. Mm-hmm. You can't do that today. I'm talking about personal, people doing,
I wonder what it is about people you can't trust. back then, if you died, they'd pay your widow back.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Now they'd say, "Oh, got out of that one."
Hey, let me tell you, that's exactly right. Exactly. Not only that, let me tell you that now, there's been people that I remember back in the days, and that certain businessmen would go and they'd say, hey, I remember one of the Cleveland's biggest businessmen one time I went and told this guy that owned a restaurant he needed to borrow $200,000. And he said, well, sure. Didn't think a thing about it. I mean, that was 40 years ago.
That was like 500,000 a day.
Oh, yeah. And he said, how long you need it for it? He said, well, I think I can do it in 60 days, but it may take me 90 days. And he said, well, let's just figure it 90 days in. And he said, here's what you owe me when you bring it back, when you pay me. And he just has a way of putting it down, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, stuff like that happen all the time. Not today. Not today. Because people, they don't care. They have no more, they don't mean what they say. They think that it's for a pie in the sky. And then something happens, well, they think, well, because I lost and I didn't win,
I can't pay you, right.
Yeah, I got a break.
Yeah.
Well, it don't
I
work
would have
that way.
paid you, but it rained.
Right. See, no, it don't work that way.
What makes people change like that now? Even back when you're talking about Ray Kaler, he couldn't bank like that today, could he?
Oh, no. I mean, listen. I bought properties. I'd be out on property. And I'd run across a good deal, and I would call Ray, and I'd say, Ray, I've got this piece of property. And he'd say, give me 10 minutes and call me back. Well, I knew he had to go talk to Richard or somebody, at the bank. So he'd go in there, and I'd call him back. He'd say, well, go ahead and write a check. And it's covered when you get here. Bring the paperwork. I'd go to the courthouse, get all the paperwork, take it to him, and it's done deal. Mm-hmm. No, you can't do that anymore.
Why is it different now? Because of the bank regulations?
Well, it's all because of bank regulation, because they won't let the bankers do,
why won't they?
They have to go through an act of Congress to loan you a small amount of money.
And if you think they're not going through an act of Congress, behind the scenes they're going through an act of Congress.
That's exactly right, see. And you think, well, he's my personal banker. He's been my banker for all these years. He's this, he's that, and he is.
I remember used to people would write a check for a car, and the bank would cover it and then make the loan. Nowadays they say, well, we can't make a loan. That's small. They don't even want to make a loan.
They don't even want to fool with it. That's right.
Things are different, aren't
they? Oh, completely different.
These old icons that we've talked about, could they navigate today? Would they figure it out?
Oh yeah, the ones, they're smart. Yeah, oh yeah, they're very smart. They knew exactly how to make it.
They'd figure it out today too.
Sorry, I guarantee you right now. You
could bring say Norman Vaughn back today and pluck him down here at 20 years old. He'd rise to the top.
Hey, yes, sorry, I guarantee you they'd figure it out. Now you take guys like. Norman Vaughn, Tip, yeah, oh yeah, some of those guys, Cletus Benton.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Hey, Cletus knew, and he had more nerve than anybody I've ever known.
Didn't he bring us Keith Street?
He brought us Key Street. Cleveland wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for Cletus Benton. He made the Key Street and Cleveland what it is today back when that we needed something. He built those plazas and all that.
Did he bring in Gibson's?
No, now that was...
But he developed the property, didn't he? Or?
That was, yeah, but that was George Calfee.
But didn't he buy it from
George
Cletus? 'Cause
Calfee.
Cletus had the Starview, right?
He had the Star View, and they had all of that property right there. Now, that was all part of
That's what
Yes.
I'm saying, yeah.
Yes, but Gibson Discount Center was George Calfee. George was a good, he's another, he was another one, man. I'm telling you right now, boy, you know, I've had some good, that was the slickest thing I ever did see pulled off with George Calfee. You know, we had supermarkets everywhere, and George Calfee was selling his milk real cheap. And he, you know, Alan Calfee, who was a detective back in those days, was his nephew, some relation. And he says, the state of Tennessee said the sheriff's department said they had to arrest George Calfee.
Because of milk restrictions?
Yes, was selling it too cheap.
Yeah.
And George told them, said no. Said, I wanted him to come up there and sign himself in and sign himself out. And he said, oh no. No. I'm here at the store. If you want me, bring a patrol car up and you bring the handcuffs, put me in handcuffs, and put me in the car, and you take me to the jail. And I'll get somebody to make my bond and get out. I said, George, you don't have to go through all that. He said, did you hear what I said? Harry Gobble managed Gibson's for George. That was exactly what happened. He had the newspaper. He had the TV stations. He had everybody there when they came and arrested him. It was all over the news. That whole parking down to there, even MC Hedrick's parking was packed full.
They were parking this MC Hedrick
to walk up to Gibson's to give him support.
Yeah.
Because he's taking care of his customers. He was offering us milk at a cheaper price, and they tried to put him in jail. We're not having...
Best advertising he could get.
I said, George, why did... George said, you couldn't have... Nobody could have ever bought that kind of advertising. True story. Take my picture. So, you know, there's a lot...
Those people could make it today in this environment.
Let me tell you right now, yes, they absolutely. If George Calfee was alive, he'd make it. Cletus Benton was alive, he'd make it. Even with times like they are.
They would figure it out, right?
Yes.
Now, there's people right now in their 20s that 100 years from now, people that remember them will say, they'll figure it out too. Because those people still come along, don't they?
Yes, they do. And I'm going to tell you, it comes a time when, you know, people, it's like on-the-job training, going to school. They learn if you just watch them. They learn from, if they don't learn from me, they learn from somebody else, learn from you. I'm talking about the younger kids, you know, the younger generation. So, and then you got these people that they know exactly what they've got to do to make it. They know this won't make it, but this will. And if they just watch and pay attention, you know, it'll come to pass.
If you had a young guy that just rode around with somebody that was successful, it would be probably better than college. If you had him ride around with this guy for 4 years.
Well, it's like me, see, I before I got my real estate license, I retired them years ago. But back when I used to, true story, I would go down to Vaughn Hamilton. He had a Cherokee Land Company down on 1st Street. Okay, I'd go down there, hang around, talk deals, listen to them talk deals. He had Vaughn Hamilton, Luke Calloway, and he have Bud Morlock. He'd come by occasionally. He's always up for seeing what was going on. They just this was the old crowd.
John Kinder probably.
Sometimes he'd drop by, but there they'd be. Well, I would just drive them just to listen. I wanted to hear, those guys knew how to put a deal together. Mm. And then there's Arlie Crane, let's not leave him
Arlie
out.
Crane, yeah.
So I would listen to those guys. He bought and sold and developed a lot of properties in Bradley County.
He used to eat at Diamond Lil's all the time, I remember.
Vaughn did?
Yeah, Vaughn, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. But didn't he develop Mapleton?
No, that was his nephew, I think.
Okay, yeah. But
See, Hamilton's owned that whole valley up through there.
yeah.
Loy Hamilton.
Loy Hamilton, yeah. Loy was his nephew, maybe?
Maybe. Oh, well, you know Lisa Stansberry?
Yep.
Okay, well, now that was her grandfather, Vaughn Hamilton.
I did not realize that.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that. Mm-hmm. Now, let's see, who else was the big guys back then? Who was it?
Back then?
Yeah.
Oh, you had W.B. Hope. You had
Grover Ash?
Grover Ash. Grover was in my office 2 days before he went fishing
And died.
Yeah.
That was a mystery, wasn't it?
That wasn't a mystery. It was still a mystery to this day.
Nobody's ever looked into it, has
No, nobody's ever. They just let her go. That's it. You figure that one out.
Grover Ash. I remember that name.
Grover Ash, yeah.
Isn't it funny how these old guys, I remember them as they were older, and you remember when they were still a little younger.
Well, yeah, they were younger, but they were older than me. But I learned from them, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
for example, I would drive Vaughn and Luke and these guys around. We'd go look at properties together.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that. And I learned from them, and I listened. I would pay attention, you know. And Luke would say, I just love these guys to death. And I learned so much from them. Luke would come in to Cherokee, and he'd say, well, now today we can, back then we had Long John Silver's here in town. Today we can have 2 pieces of fish, 2 puppies, and some fries for $1.49 back then. And he said, and I've got 3 coupons. He said, Vaughn, did you cut the coupons out? And I'm sitting here thinking, this is why they got what they got.
Yeah.
Number 1. Number 2 is they're all They're knowledgeable. Well, I'm ready to go look at that farm. You ready to go? We'd go look at the farm.
And they'd spend thousands on the farm and trying to cut coupons for lunch.
Yes, sirree. And they manage that money. Manage that money. People said, well, that's foolish. Those guys knew. And it was hilarious to me. I learned so much from those guys. Yes.
That is, it's invaluable, isn't it?
Oh, it's totally invaluable. Just and to watch them, how they work, and how it's unbelievable how they do it.
What about some of these, I guess you'd say, like Sam Cannon. Did you know much of Sam?
Oh Lord, you know I bought his place down
I didn't realize.
at exit 20. Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sam was my buddy. Yeah, yeah.
Sam was a good guy.
He was
He ran for office 11 times, he told me. Public office.
Well, he was getting up there next to Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yes. But let me tell you, Sam Cannon was, he was, boy, I tell you, he was, he'd come by my office about every day. And we'd sit there and we'd talk about this and that and all. This is way before exit 20. He'd come by. And when I bought the Village Inn down here from Ben Cape, he put all of his people, when they'd come to town, he always put all of his people down here at the motel. Mm. And Sam was just a dear friend. And I told Sam one time, I said, Sam, Sam was, he was one of the best sheriffs, I guess, and he was a good man. But Sam had a side to him that you didn't want to rub him the wrong way. He was kind of like Lamar Lawson. They were good men, but you don't want to rub them the wrong way. Now,
Different era of sheriffing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, Sam came to my office one day and he was telling me, he said he was getting some things in order and stuff, and he was telling me he had been to Vanderbilt, and he said, have you ever seen fried bacon? And I said, sure. He just opened his shirt up, and they had what your heart was, it gets out of rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to pop him with them pedals, you know. And sure enough, boy, he had two big burn places on him. And I said, what in the world? He said, to keep me alive for a little bit longer. He said, I told you a long time ago I quit buying green bananas. And I said, Sam, what in the world? And he said, it's had to be done. Anyway, he said, he was telling me how things were going to be, and it was something he checked out. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, well, I hope it's that way. And you know how, I said, I know what you're saying, but it may not be. And Sam said, do you want to go with me down there and look at that property or not? And he didn't want to talk about it. So he didn't want to hear it.
Right.
So, but he was a funny turn guy, but he was a good guy.
He always drove that little white truck. Remember
He
that?
always that little
It
white
had
truck.
a blue Oxford shirt.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
No matter, long sleeve, no
See,
matter how hot
he
it
was related, and I'm not sure how. When I was a kid, my grandfather, he had 2 farms up in McMinn County. Excuse me, one in Polk County and one in McMinn. And there was a veterinarian named Fred Cannon. And he had a son named Calvin Cannon, who later was elected for state representative, I think. And so I always wondered. I mean, I always knew they were related. Now, how exactly, I never did know, but Sam knew them. It was real tight.
Wasn't he from Claxton?
Mm-hmm.
Claxton, Tennessee.
Well, see, my grandfather's farm, one of them was right down from Claxton on Athens Benton Road in the Chestuey community. Mm-hmm. Well, see, that's kind of where I grew up when I was just a little kid. And, of course, my mom's family was from Bradley County. They were Rapiers. Fred Rapier was my grandfather. He owned a farm down here. He and my uncle Elmer Rapier. And so if I was up there, I was on the farm, and if I was down here, I was
So was
on
that
the farm.
Kevin Rapier? Was that, what relation is that?
Elmer was my uncle. Mm. Larry Rapier is my first cousin, and Charlie. And we got a lot of first cousins over there. You know, Randy. Joe just passed away with that COVID stuff. But
Did you ever get COVID?
I didn't get it till right at the very end.
That's when I got it.
And I got it, and I thought I was going to die for 2 days. For 2 days, Dee, I didn't think I'd live till the next day. And so finally, I didn't want my family to know, because I'm pretty close with my family. And I only have one sister. Diane Hamilton is my sister. Don Hamilton was my brother-in-law. He's passed. And so Greg Hamilton was my only nephew, and then I had Christy. She passed in 2000, I think it was 2011, I believe. She was a nurse, RN, but I knew my family, they would be upset because I've kind of like been the, what they call the backbone of this. And so I didn't tell them that I didn't think I was going to live. I just talked to my Lord. And I said, Lord, if it's not meant to be, if it's my time's up, if I am not useful to anybody anymore, and I'm ready to go, I want to make sure that my heart is right with you. And so they gave me this medication, and it didn't seem to help me much. And I thought I just knew I was gone. And that was, I guess the first day I woke up with it about 4 in the morning. And sick as a dog. I never hurt like that. I the flu one time several years ago, and I thought it might take me out, but it was a lot compared to this. And so that night, I thought going into that night, I was running a fever, and it wasn't nothing going right for me. And so I talked to the Lord again about it, and I was ready for whatever happened that night. If I had left, I was okay. And so that night, I survived that night. And it still touches my heart for that. And I said, Lord, if I'm going to make it, well, you got to do something. Because of the DI, I had no strength. I couldn't even get up. I'd never been like that my whole life. And I fell asleep, taking that medicine. Don't know what it did for me. It must have helped me some. And the next morning, I never took a shot. And the next morning, I woke up a different man.
Is that right?
Don't know what happened during the night. I slept right through it. But the next morning, I ate, but I had the strength to get up. For 2 days, I couldn't even get up. Man, that stuff was bad. It's lethal. And I lost a lot of friends during that. Mm-hmm. And I always thought if I got it, that it might take me out. So I don't know why I'm still here, but through that and my aorta surgery and all, I'm still here, and so it's got to be for a reason. Don't know what it is.
Were you raised religious?
Yes. Oh, yes. My parents we were raised in hard shell Baptist churches. I mean, we were what they called back then. It was hard shell Baptists. I mean, those people, boy, they didn't believe you were supposed to even. I don't know. Since then, things have.
So the Baptists back then were harder nosed than now.
They call them hard shell Baptists. And believe you me, we were hard shell Baptists. My father was a bass singer. I remember as a kid, my dad, he sang bass for all his life, and his brothers, they had their own quartet for years. And then my dad sang with other groups. He was a good bass singer when he was young. And I would go, my mom would take me if my dad was going to be like at Memorial Auditorium. And back then they called, it was the old auditorium downtown Chattanooga before McKenzie Arena and all that stuff. And my dad was friends with all these gospel singers all over the country, you know. And that's why J.D. Sumner and I, we were just, I mean, he was a good guy. He was my dear friend, had a place there at the Choda. And every time he'd come off the road, well, he'd come there. And, but anyway, and Dad, but that was when I was just a little kid, and then I always loved gospel music, gospel singing. I never did care for some of this stuff, but now they ask you what kind of music you like. I got two kinds. I like good old country, the old country. And I like, because that's always an experience that happened in somebody's life.
Like Waylon Jennings
Yeah,
or the
Johnny
older
Cash,
Johnny Cash.
And, oh yes, I mean, Willie Nelson, all those guys, you know, I like that. And gospel music. And I love good, Lord, good gospel music. And I like music that I can feel something. You know, see, I believe that I think we have spirit. Everybody is born with a spirit and a soul. I believe that. And if you lose that spirit, if you lose that soul, you lose your spirit, you're going to lose your soul. Now, have I been Mr. Perfect all my life? No, absolutely not. I have to get forgiveness every day. For maybe I don't even know, but I do anyway. Because I probably did something yesterday I shouldn't have done. But yes, I was always taught and raised that way all my life. That, hey, there's a God, and there's a heaven, and there's a hell. And I believe that. The Bible says it, and I believe it. Now, Dee, why would I go and tell you that I'm a Christian if I didn't believe the Word of God? If I only picked out parts of the Bible and said, well, I believe this, but I don't believe this. Well, I believe this, but I don't believe this. Well, I think that's ridiculous. Either Jesus was the Son of God or he wasn't. And I do believe he was. Now, do I, you know, Emmy Littlefield told me one time when I was 29 years old, he said, did you ever hear of Emmy Littlefield?
That's Steve Hartline's
Grandfather,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you ever, you never met him?
I never met him.
He was your loss. Because I can tell you, he was the truest man of God I ever met in my entire life. Harvey Harkins, this is what I mean when I say he was a true man of God. He lived it on a daily basis. Harvey Harkins owned a men's store here in Cleveland, right here on Ocoee Street, across from where Walgreens is now at 25th. There was a little building there, and it was the men's store. And Harvey and a guy by the name of Sonny Chamley. Sonny, I knew Sonny, he was a good boy. But anyway, I went in there one time. I used to do this, and I enjoyed it. See, I think you enjoy things when you help somebody. So I walked in there and I told Harvey, I said, Harvey, I want to buy a suit I gave him the size. Gladys would help me. Sister Gladys would always help me get his size, you know, what he wore. And I'd give it to Harvey. And I'd say, I'm going to send him over here. And I said, yeah, you feed him up, make sure it's, you know. Well, lo and behold, I sent him over there to get his suit. He took a young preacher with him, and that didn't have, had just started preaching. he needed a suit of clothes. He gave my suit of clothes that I gave him to that young preacher and had Harvey fit him up with it. Never will forget that. That's the kind. Gladys had a time of keeping his shoes. I mean, he gave it whatever they needed. I mean, he was just that man. He was that kind of man. And I said, Lord help. But anyway, he told me one time when I was 29 years old, he was from Maine. He had a Maine drawl about him. He said, boy, the hand of God is on your life, and you will be a minister. You will be an evangelist, one of the greatest evangelists. I looked at him, I thought, I never said nothing. I never said a word. And I drove a Corvette Stingray back then. I don't know why, it's probably, I guess I was, when I first met him, here's how I met him. I drove a Corvette Stingray car, and somebody, I forgot who it was now, but told me to go. My mother, I think, told me to go meet this man named M.E. Littlefield. I was maybe 20 years old. I don't know. Something like that. And he got in my Corvette, and we went and got something to eat together. And he said, Hoyt, we're just about sitting on the ground here. Got back to the church, and that moment on, I had the highest respect for that man. And when I was 29 then, he told me that, but I told him, I said, Brother Lovell, I was developing Beverly Hills Mobile Estates out on off of Harrison Pike on Sipes Road. And at that time, it was not like it was today. And he told me, he said, I said, Brother Littlefield, I think I've got a lot on my platter right now, too much for this. I can tell you that right now. And he said, just you wait and you'll see. But people like that have been so influential, mentors of mine, that I just, and he taught me how to, with my parents, the way they had raised me, and here I was, and one day I found out that in the wintertime, these people were, woman and 4 little kids over here in a house off of 9th Street Southeast. They were living in this house. It was just an old house that somebody had knocked most of the windows out of. And Brother Littlefield told me about it. Me and my wife, I went and measured the windows and went and had the windows cut. And we put windows in all day on a Saturday in that house so it wouldn't be, and it was cold that winter. But I enjoyed doing stuff like that. That was part of me in my life. If I could help somebody, and if I, I just had that. I don't know. I could not.
Well, you've always been a real helpful type. I mean, if you were stranded and you had to call somebody, it wouldn't make you mad.
No.
That's what I'm
It
saying.
wouldn't make me mad. And I would say, at that time, I would say, I'll be there as fast
Oh
as I
yeah,
can get there.
and you would,
Oh, yeah. No
and
doubt.
everybody knows that.
This guy came in when we had the Village Motel, and this boy, his name was Dwayne, and I forgot his last name. He directed traffic over here at Mayfield School. Good boy, had a bad wreck. Down South Lee Highway there in Ballpark Curve, what we call Ballpark, at the Boys Club. And he lost his eye. And I didn't know anything about it. Later I found out that they actually had to remove his eye and all this stuff. And my daughter told me, Tyra, and she said, Daddy, is there any way you can help him? And I said, well, honey, you're not talking, we're talking serious. I said, I'll tell you what you do. You find out all the details and let me know. Well, God was good. He would just open the doors up. And that guy's got an eye today because things got opened everything up, and I just enjoy.
Do you think God has a real direct hand in a lot of this stuff?
I believe he does have it because, this happened to me so many times. I remember when I bought the Birmingham Best Western at the Birmingham Airport. And we took our fleet, our guys down there, and we were interviewing, we were just taking over that night. It had the closing. And I remember this, so it's been several years ago, but I remember this guy. And we were interviewing the head housekeepers and all departments. And I brought in a manager from Minnesota. And his name was Steve Watson. He had been a linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings. Now that he's retired, he's managing hotels, and I hired him. And I'm interviewing these people. This is just touching to me. It's touching. Here's this little guy that he's the bellman there at the hotel. His name was Jack Seals. I'll never forget it. I hadn't seen Jack in so many years. It's been years. I'm sure he's dead now. But Jack walked in. And I could tell he was real tense and nervous. And I was interviewing him. I said, Jack, what's wrong with you? He said, I know you're going to tell me you don't need me anymore. And I don't know what I'm going to tell my family. I said, why would you think I would be doing something like that? He said, well, because this is the best I can dress. And I can already tell from your operations it is not going to work for you. I said, no, Jack, but that's not the end of the line. It's not the end of the line. So we ordered a new van for him to pick up passengers, at the airport. And I told the lady at the hotel, I said, take Jack to Century Mall And I said, and buy him a new wardrobe. And about every tooth in his head was gone. And I said, I told this other lady, I said, find a dentist that can take care of him right away. I want to get him in and get his teeth pulled and get him some partials, dentures. You would have thought I gave that man $1 million. And the reason his mother was paraplegic. His wife was a diabetic, and this man was keeping his mother up, his wife up, and doing off of what little bit he made at that hotel. And he said, Mr. Clark, tears streaming, that was worth everything that I did. He said, thank you for all you've done for me. Nobody's ever done that for me in my entire life. I said, Jack, you're a good employee, and he was a good employee. But stuff like that, I think that's of God. God expects us to do that. He wants us to do that. If we can't do it, then I think we have no purpose.
And it doesn't have to be a lot sometimes, does it?
Didn't have to be a lot at all. It's just the fact that it's just the way it was. And there's things that have happened to me, even up in Sevierville and Gatlinburg and places like that, up through the years that I just.
But these people that don't believe there's a God, they're not paying much attention, are they?
No. I couldn't even go to sleep tonight thinking I didn't believe in God. The way this country's headed right now, oh, let me tell you right now, the wrath, I'm telling you, something's going to happen in the political arena, and people better get ready for it, because I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen.
Everything's getting crazier and crazy. If you can't think of it, if you can think it up, it's happening.
Well, just like when they tell you that they can't describe a woman. And they put her on a Supreme Court. Give me a break.
Oh, yeah.
When they tell me they don't know when they're born, God don't make mistakes. You're a male or you're a female. They say, well, I was born a female, but for some reason, I want to be a male. Or vice versa, whichever. You what? What is it?
I've known men that were sort of feminine, but I didn't think they wanted to be a woman.
Oh, that's me. I mean, I've dealt with that all my life,
I've seen women that are tomboys, but they don't want to be men.
Listen, I've raised and taught my children that all their life. And I've taught them to be giving, I've taught them to be helpful, I've taught them, and every one of them the same way. And I look at them and I think, when people tell me, and I flip on the TV and I see some news where they're letting dragon shows go on with our kids.
Yeah.
And the schools are teaching what they're teaching.
That's crazy.
Let me tell you something. People say what they want to about the South. And I have to say this, Dee. My son, Stuart, is my youngest son. His senior year, he was at Cleveland 3 years, and then he went to Bradley for his senior year. But I'm going to tell you something. when I realized what kind of school system we had here in our county, in our city, and I knew Dale Hughes was the kind of man that he is. And I knew what he believed in. And see, his nephew, Ray Hughes, and I went to Mayfield together and hadn't seen Ray in many years, but they're God-fearing people. And when I see that kind of stuff, and I see what kind of tight ship he ran at Bradley Central High School, and those people, they respected God, and I see all this stuff going on all over the rest of the world. Am I glad I'm from Cleveland, Tennessee?
Yeah.
Am I glad I call Cleveland home? Am I glad? I am. I get excited about it because I think to myself, what about? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I agree with everything our city or our county does. No. That's their thinking. I may disagree, but I have that right. But one thing we all agree on is, hey, our Heavenly Father, there's a God in heaven, and they don't like this rubbish, and they know what a boy and a girl is, and they know, this is the way they're raised. And they believe the Word. They believe the Word of God. And I like I said earlier, don't tell me you're a Christian, and I'm not your judge, but don't tell me you're a Christian and you start picking out different parts of the Bible you don't believe in. What? That don't even make sense.
You would have been a good preacher. You would have been a good preacher.
I won't go that far. But I will tell you this. I've given my testimony a few times through the years. And I'm just who I am. Some people, maybe don't like me. I
don't know anybody that doesn't like Hoyt Clark.
I try to lie.
You're a Cleveland icon, and nobody disagrees with that.
Well, I'm just who I am, and I love everybody. I may not agree with you on everything.
That's irrelevant.
That's irrelevant
It doesn't
because
matter.
Everybody has their own way of thinking. But hey, that doesn't mean I don't love you. Because you're a good guy. And I look at all these other businessmen and say, now there's been a few through the years that I've not always, I always agreed with stuff. And yes, back years ago, I learned back when I was, I should have learned it a little before, but I didn't. They said, my dad was a very firm man. He dotted every I, crossed every T. And I'm just telling you, that's the way it was. Didn't make any difference. I mean, if I got caught doing something I shouldn't be done, I begged Paul Johnson one night. He used to be the state Tennessee Highway Patrol here. And I was running my fast car up. They had just finished and Paul pulled me over and I said, Paul, please, you ain't give me a ticket, please. Don't take me home. And I was about 16, I think, something. I just hadn't had them long. He said, I'm taking you to Fred, and he's going to know what you were doing. And, I'd rather, a whole lot rather him just haul me over to the Justice Center has done that. But anyway, that was, I learned from that. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you right now, it's the people. I don't understand how that people can live the way that they're living, do the things they're doing, and think that told you I love gospel music, and there's a song that says, "One day at a time, sweet Jesus."
That's all I'm asking of you.
That's all I'm asking of you. And and every day I say the same thing. And when I rise in the morning, I said, Lord, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for another day. And I said, well, but no, I have not always, I can't please everybody. And I try to, but I want to be, a part of, for example, I am. I'm a devout Republican. Most people know that. I was for John Kennedy. Don't misunderstand. But yes, Ronald Reagan was the greatest man that I think has ever been born in political arena. And yes, I was very involved in, a lot of, and Bubba Ricketts, Wilburn Ricketts, he and I were so close. And now he's no longer with us, but that's how I sold the state of Tennessee, the state building in Chattanooga. He told me that in Franklin, and he got upset at me because that was just business. But I knew that Hialeah, the Pilot Life, and Hialeah had bought Interstate Life. And so that had to come to pass. So I sold it to the state of Tennessee. The sales tax division already had their vault and everything. It was an ideal situation for them. And now they are now. But so I think that we only need good, solid, hard people that believe in right and wrong and godliness. And if we don't have it, then only God. We're at the mercies of what's going to happen to this country, because God's getting tired of it, and I do believe that. With all my heart, I do believe that. There's no way that this country, with the liberal, woke, and all this stuff that's going on, what in the world? Somebody better wake up. I mean, hey, if they don't know what a woman is, and they don't know what female and male is, and they don't know, I mean, people need to wake up and smell the roses here. Because, I don't think that God would allow that many idiots to be born on the same planet.
It is a different world, isn't it?
It's so different from the way I grew up and today, and watching how things have happened, and watching, it's just so different. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't claim to be no great theologian, but I knew that one of the guys that had one of the, Jim McLean and Hollis Goss, had my father's funeral. And Hollis, one of the finest men ever walked in shoe leather, and Jim, of course. But Hollis wrote a lot of books, and he told me, I don't know, a few years ago, he said he just didn't know where this country's headed. Now, we're talking a man here that was one of the greatest theologians known to mankind. Brilliant, very brilliant. when it comes to the Word of God, and I'm talking about Greek, and I mean, this man was, I don't even know anybody can compare with him.
All this stuff may come back around like we was talking about, how things come back around to the way it used to be.
You're exactly right. And let me tell you something, there's nothing wrong with the old-fashioned way.
It seems like it's tried and true, and it just keeps coming back to the way things used to be.
It does, Dee. It does. I mean, you just look at it, and there's people that I don't know how they could possibly get so mixed up with all their thinking and that as it is today. But stop and think. The old-fashioned way was always successful. Now, I don't mean they didn't make mistakes, and I don't mean, but I'm talking about in religion. They knew they knew what a woman, the meaning of a woman. Mm-hmm. They knew the difference between male and female. You know, I'm going back, you know, when I was a boy and before that.
Yeah.
I mean, how can it be so changed today? And I look, and here we are so blessed to have. Can you imagine we got Lee University? Now I go down through there and I look what Paul Kahn and how they developed. I remember when it was Lee College.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when if they walked down Ocoee Street, you knew exactly where they were from.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I remember the way they dressed.
No jewelry. Remember
no
that?
Jewelry, and they wore, you know, they didn't wear mini skirts and all that stuff. You know, I'm just saying.
What's different now, isn't it?
It is different, but can you believe right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, I commend Paul Kahn on all the work. He worked, I mean, so hard.
It was all him, too, wasn't it?
Oh, it was every bit him, but he gave 110% to make it a university. And boy, he was right there. And of course, you know, I think he was a grade ahead of me, but I knew Paul and his brother Stephen.
Were they good guys in school?
Oh, yeah, they were. And we used to call him Raymond. Raymond. And now he's Ray.
Yeah. He's a nice guy. I like him.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was a good boy.
Yeah.
They just didn't make him in. And, of course, I knew Phyllis. I knew, you know, and Philip. And they were a good group. Salt of the earth. And, you know, we're blessed in Cleveland to have the salt of the earth type people. You know? I mean, and it doesn't have to be Lee University or Church of God. We've got Ted and Judy Gold. The finest people, salt of the earth. And their families. And you just look at that and you think, hey, you cannot dispute this. It is what it is. You know, and so to know that you're from Cleveland, you live here in Cleveland, and you grow up around this kind of environment, you know, and you look at them and you think, man alive, this is not a dream, this is a reality. Because you would think it would be a dream, and nowadays in our country, to find a city like Cleveland.
That's why everybody's wanting to come here.
Tom Rowland done a great job.
Well, he did, didn't he?
He did do a great job. Yes, he did. Don, one of his cohorts there back in radio days that worked for me, and Don was a good guy, but Tom did a marvelous job with Cleveland and growth and stuff. And you know,
I still remember hearing him on the radio, don't you?
I do. I remember early in the morning.
He'd get there at what, 5 o'clock or something? Get up at 5 o'clock?
Yes. He'd get there about 5 o'clock in the morning.
You listen to WCLE in the morning?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And Corky Whitlock was on WBAC.
WBAC.
Yes.
WBAC with Corky Whitlock.
Yes. And see, Lee Walls, he had the Cleveland Banner. He lived in Birmingham. And, I mean, it was just, Lee lived here for several years, you know.
All of those people have helped make Cleveland what it is. Even if it was a small role,
Yes.
they really helped.
Well, it was like that you saw what happened, how it happened, I look at it today, and as a matter of fact, I was just the other day thinking, wonder where the Cleveland, with all the other things that's happened, how it's grown, it's nothing like the little Cleveland I grew up in. And now I look at it, and I think, where would it be if Cletus Benton had just been here to play a part in it? He had a foresight. He could see things, and he had such a good heart.
People that knew him loved him.
To know him was to love him. I've seen people borrow cars from him and be going to use it on a weekend, going up to have a revival somewhere, and they'd say, well, I'll be back Monday and I'll have your car back. Well, something happened, and they didn't get the car back that Monday or the next Monday or the next Monday or the next Monday. And finally, they'd drive on the lot, and Griff would be all bent out of shape, you know about it. And Cletus says, it's okay. He was doing a good work. Maybe he'd been up in Virginia or no telling where having a revival. And I guess it would go over a week or 2 or 3 or whatever, I don't know. But he borrowed a car from Cletus. Cletus.
When you talk about Griff, you mean Big Money's daddy?
Yeah. I hope he's doing well.
I think he is. I haven't seen him, and boy, he is so funny. He could have been a comedian.
He could have been a great comedian.
He would have been probably the world's best comedian. He just really missed his calling.
He did.
He's so funny.
And you know, it's such a shame that well, I don't know. He just, you know, I look at Ricky Butler. Ricky's a good boy. He, and I know that, you know, they were neighbors there for years and years and years. And Dot, Ricky's mother, you know, and I look at Griff and I look and I think, wow. When you something,
Yeah, right.
I mean, what happened? I mean, Dickie and Dot raised Ricky. I mean, you don't understand stuff like that. But I think, and I mean, you would think that he, because Griff was a good man.
Yeah.
And did well. And I just don't understand some things, you know, but I can't explain it. So I just know that Ricky Butler's a good boy. And I knew Ricky and his mother and daddy and his sister Susan
Boy, you've got a good memory.
oh yeah, she married Johnny Gamble.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the pillar of the community. I mean, you know, the over in South
Yeah,
Carolina, they live
yeah.
over there, but Ricky Butler's one of the finest guys. I mean, he's made it. He's done well.
He has done well. I buy a lot of stuff over
Oh,
there.
yeah, and he's a good boy to deal with, too.
Yeah.
But,
He'll stand behind it and work with you however he
Oh, absolutely, no doubt about it. But hey, you know, you just you look at people like that you've known throughout your whole, and weren't even a puppy. You know, I'm a lot older than Ricky.
can. You know, I was at your house the first time I watched MTV on TV. I was there. I just got, because Tony was over there, and Tyra and Tim and everybody.
Yeah.
I remember seeing MTV for the first time.
Is that right?
Why I remember that, I just got off Red Food bagging groceries.
Oh, you had?
Yeah, and I just remember that.
Yeah.
Boy, you've always
That's
been one.
how you knew
That's how
my
I
little
knew.
fella.
That's how
What'd you say his name is? Chucky?
Chuck White.
Yeah,
Chuck
Chucky
yeah.
White. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
all worked at Cook's. I mean, Red Food.
Red Food, yeah.
We all worked at Cook's, then we went to Red Food.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But Hoyt, you're one of my favorite people.
Well, thank you, Dee. You have always been a very up and coming. I knew you when you were a young guy.
Just a young kid.
I knew that I said one day you'll read him in the headlines, just watch him see.
I love you,
And
man. I really appreciate you coming.
Well, you're certainly welcome.